If you're over here in England, thank you so much for joining me. I will close that now because that's working fine. And we're about to run today's session about high performance metrics, or metrics for high performance websites, I should say. I'm just going to get my windows organized and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's get to it. I am coming at this from 25 years in digital marketing. I've worked for companies like Microsoft and Google, LinkedIn, Symantec. I've consulted for them, and I've been running Articulate Marketing for most of that time. And we are a marketing agency specializing in websites and things like that. So I've been in this headspace of, how do you make your website work? And at Articulate, we've built over 110 HubSpot hosted websites. So we've kind of been on the technical side of this as well. We are a marketing agency that does brand strategy, websites, copywriting, automation, and AI using HubSpot. And we particularly like working with businesses, B2B technology companies that help make the world a better place, help people live flourishing, sustainable, healthy lives. So that's us. Quick plug, if you would like me to take a close look at your website, I would be delighted to do that. You can book up a session with me, articulatemarketing.com/meet. That's my calendar there. Just book something up. You can email me, matthew@articulatemarketing.com. Click on the link when you get the PDF of this. Very much love to talk to you. There's no pressured sales or anything. I will apply some of these techniques and some of the other tools that we have. Look at your website, give you a playback of how I think it's going, what you could do to improve it. So enough about me. Let's talk about website metrics. So I'm going to look at loading speed, SEO health, SEO reach, readability, and sentiment and conversion rates. Those are the 5 things that I've prepared. And let's get into the first thing here. So why does loading speed matter? Loading speed is the time it takes for the page to appear or the website to appear on your screen, on your laptop, on your mobile phone. First of all, fast loading websites feel better. You know this from your own experience. If you've ever come across a slow loading one and you get frustrated because it's loading or there's a wait bar or something's happening, especially if they make you, there's like a progress bar while it's loading and you think, oh, come on, just give me the information. So user experience is an important factor. It's a part of the perception of the website. And that's especially true if you're loading over a mobile connection and things are slow. Conversion rate is also affected directly by how long the page takes to load. For example, Walmart discovered that reducing the page speed, the page loading time by a second, increased conversions by 2%. And if you're Walmart, 2% of your online sales is a bucket load of money and well worth having. Similarly, in the UK, Cook, which is an online food company, they increased conversion rates by 7% by making pages load 0.85 seconds faster. So there is data that proves that fast loading sites convert better, and wouldn't you want that to happen for your site? And lastly, Google makes this information available to you. They make tools available to you. They report on what they call Core Web Vitals in Google Search Console. It's clear that they would like sites to load quicker, and it's therefore reasonable to assume that it's a search engine ranking factor. Okay. So how do you measure page loading speed? You can measure it quite simply using a Google tool called Page Speed Insights. This is free, and almost all the things in this talk are free to access. The one that isn't, I'll mention when I get there. There are obviously other tools that cost money. We have a whole bunch of things that we use and pay for as an agency, but for this purpose, for this talk, I'm trying to help you find things that you can go do and measure today. So the leading metric that you're looking for on this page speeds site is performance metric, and there's the performance score for Articulate, 99% on desktop, fantastic, a little slower on mobile. This is what Google calls lab test results. So it's it's loading your site into their computer and running a set of tests on it to estimate how long it takes, or to measure how long it takes, and give you feedback on that. So there's a little bit of variation depending on when you run the test, due to network traffic or performance load on the server that's delivering your website and so on, so that you can get different results at different times of the day on the same site. If you have enough traffic, this website will also give you what they call field data. And Google obviously has a lot of sensors out on the internet with Google Analytics and with Google Chrome, and it can measure how long pages take to actually load for actual users and aggregate that and report on that. So that field data, which I haven't shown a screenshot of, is also really useful, because that's what people are really experiencing. And so there's this sort of these different types of measurements are different ways of getting its page speed. There are other tools paid for or more complicated to use, that will give you aggregate data over time or across multiple pages on a website, or both. And it's worth investigating those. The more complex and more important your site is, the more attention you need to pay to this. But as a basic benchmark, we think you should be aiming to pass Core Web Vitals. So go into Google Search Console or use field data here to see if you're passing that, and to get at least 85% on average on most occasions when you run this test on your site. So that's the benchmark for us. How do you improve loading speed? Well, there are lots of things you can do, lots of ways of measuring it, lots of suggestions. Google PageSpeed Insights comes up with a list of often quite gnomic suggestions and recommendations. In our experience, the easiest, quickest win is to compress images. You get people, we build beautifully optimized fast loading sites, and then people will upload 2, 3, 4 megabyte picture files all across the page, and so suddenly your 300 kilobyte page becomes 8 megabytes and it loads slowly. So I like this Squoosh app. I find it easy to use. There are many other ways of compressing images for websites. This isn't the only tool in town, but it's free. So compressing images that are bigger than 400 or 500 kilobytes, so that they are smaller than 400 or 500 kilobytes, is a good thing to do. Getting rid of tracking codes, avoiding embedded videos, also common ways of slowing down a website. So people will have, I don't know, LinkedIn tracking code and Lucky Orange and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing running, and all those codes being loaded in slow the thing down. Once you've done that, you start getting into more sort of technical things about the infrastructure and the development of the site. So on HubSpot, when you build a site on their platform, it takes care of caching, content delivery, network pre-rendering for you, and does quite a lot of that sort of engineering. On WordPress, we quite like WP Engine, and there are plugins you can get for WordPress sites that do some of these things. And then you get into just coding the site efficiently and optimizing it. It's quite depressing how often we see companies that have just spent a very large amount of money on a new website, where the developer cared rightly and understandably for the content and the design and the appearance, but paid no attention to page speed optimization at all. And quite often we have to go fix that and pay attention to it. And obviously we're trying to develop from a performance-based loading speed basis as well as other things. So sorry, it's been a long day and I've talked too much, so I've got a bit of a tickly throat. All right, so let's move on to metric number 2, SEO health. So why does SEO health matters? Again, it's a factor of user experience. A lot of things that you would do to improve the SEO health of your website, you would also do to make it a better website, like fix broken links. Make sure that all the images have alt tags, so people who are using a screen reader can understand what's on the page. Writing good meta description, so that when people get a search engine results page, they see what the page is about. Those things are all good things to do anyway, but they are also probably SEO ranking factors. And a site that has a very poor SEO health probably has less chance of ranking for the same keywords or the same AI search as a good, easy to scan, well constructed site. And I think this SERPs impressions thing, I mentioned this search engine results page, you generally don't get to control directly a lot of things in SEO, but you can control the page title and you can control the little meta description that appears under it. In most cases, sometimes Google rewrites it, but usually if the what's there isn't very good. So this is your way of getting your message out onto Google, onto the results page. I've talked in a previous webinar about how AI overviews and AI search is affecting the way people search for things. And tune in for that webinar pre-recorded on the website at Articulate Marketing. There's an interesting shift happening, but Google is doing more searches than it ever did before, at least 5 trillion a year, and our friends at Search Pilot reckon probably more like 5.6, 5.7 trillion. That's a lot of searching, right? It still drives a lot of traffic. SEO is still not unimportant. So how do you measure it? Well, there's a tool called RFs, Ahrefs, pronounce it how you like, RFs / webmaster tools, that's free. We have the paid version, the professional version at Articulate. So this is our SEO tool, one of our SEO tools of choice. You can go in there, you put your website URL, and it will give you a percentage score. So this is Articulate score. We're 99%. Great. Not perfect, but who wants to be perfect? Perfection taught you nothing. What this means is the percentage of pages that have no SEO errors according to RFs on them. There's lots of warnings, lots of other things you can fix, but you definitely want to try and fix most of, if not all, the errors that are reported. And certainly you want to have it more than 80%. So go measure your site, go have a look at that. How do you improve that? Well, the RFs tool will give you a list of errors. These are the live current errors on Articulate's website. We've got a lot of pages, so 15, 16 errors out of 500-600 pages is the 1%. You want to go through and just fix them. Typically, some of them will be easy to fix just by adding an alt tag or adding a meta description or something. Sometimes they'll be a little bit more complicated and need some developer support. Generally, fixing broken links, images, and broken JavaScript is important. Adding meta descriptions and alt tags, good for everybody. Definitely untangle sitemaps and robot.txt issues. We had one site that they were complaining they weren't getting any SEO text, and it turned out that their developer had put in robots text. Google don't scan this site, because they'd done that during the development process and they didn't want Google to spider the site before it was launched, but they forgot to update the robots text when they launched the site. So that kind of thing can come up in this. Happily, that's not a very common occurrence, but so fix those sorts of things. When we work on SEO, there's always more to do than time available. So we work on a sprint basis. We allocate a fixed amount of time to doing this for ourselves and for our clients. And we have a prioritized backlog of issues, and we just burn down the list. The prioritization tends to be highest payoff, least effort goes at the top, and you sort in that on that basis. So that's how to improve it. Yeah, you could also talk to us, and we can roll our sleeves up and fix a lot of this stuff for you, especially in HubSpot. Okay, third metric, SEO reach and AI citations. Similar things, but one is for AI search and one is for conventional Google, Bing type search. So organic search traffic is still and has long been an essential source of traffic. So over a certain time frame for Articulate, we've had 3 million sessions, 3 million visits to our website. Of those, 3/4 came from organic search. So for Articulate, it has been a very powerful, more than 2 million visits source of traffic to the site. Yes, it's getting a little bit harder, and it's getting a little bit more challenging with people doing AI search and with companies, the enshittification of everything. Companies want to charge you for traffic more than they used to and things like that. But it is still a meaningful source of traffic, and SEO reach is a valuable proxy for brand awareness and competitive positioning, independent of its role with traffic generation. So it matters. How do you measure it? Well, you can use the same RF's webmaster tools I mentioned earlier, and they will give you a number of figures, including, I think, this DR1 domain rank. This is a useful metric if you want to pick just one indicator of your SEO reach, and it wraps up a number of things, but primarily it's measuring the number of sites that are linking to you. So this is a useful measure of your mind share, your reach, your brand presence. And that backlinking thing is quite helpful. The data at the bottom left here, the AI citations, is the one thing in here that is a part of a paid tool. And this is all articulate data. I don't mind sharing my data. I don't want to share client data. And so we have some presence on some of these AI citations. To be honest, in most cases, when we look at client sites, they have 0 to 1 or 2 of these. And this is a new thing in RFs. It's a new thing generally measuring AI reach citations. And it's probably more directionally and comparatively interesting than it is absolutely accurately objectively true, if you see what I mean. So if this site has more than that site, that's useful to know, but is that exactly the number? I don't think even Google knows how Gemini works. So okay, there is a free thing from HubSpot, the AI search grader, which gives you not quite such numerical scores, but is useful if you want something just to go and measure your sort of AI presence. We would expect a site that had been around for a bit, was reasonably well optimized, had a reasonable backlink profile. So this might be an average site for a small or mid-market company. A DR of around 30, 40 would be a pretty good domain rank, right? If you're in the 80s, 90s, you're Microsoft, you're a big company. 50 plus, would be a pretty good score. I think across our client base, we have mostly in that range, 30 to 50. A new startup might be under 10. If you're, not doing as well, then that might be evidence that you want to go and, invest a bit more in SEO, in profile building, in backlink building, and so on. And how would you do that? Well, fundamentally, create and promote high quality content, especially if it's got unique, citable data and insights, this expertise, experience, authority, and trust, people first content. Looking at what your competitors are ranking for, what gaps there are in the market. This skyscraper technique is you spot something that somebody else has published and is getting traffic, and you do something much better and you try and get some of that traffic. All of these sort of traditional SEO techniques, I think fundamentally it's still valid if you want to focus on great content, even when you're focusing on AI search and AI overviews and AI mode in Google. And it's also good, even if none of those things were happening, you would probably still want to have that kind of content for PR and engagement with your sales process. I think this last point, go where your audience is. Rand Fishkin's always interesting talking about reach and SEO. And he suggests if you have following on, if your customers are on Instagram, if they're on YouTube, if they're on Reddit, if they're on Quora, go and be present there. Go and share your content there. And I think that's good advice. I think particularly Reddit and Quora have an important role with AI search. A lot of citations come from those platforms. I've got a webinar I did about that side of things, and I'd recommend going and having a look at that. Okay, so moving on. Another 10 minutes. So readability and sentiment. Why does this matter? I think it's extraordinary sometimes that companies will pay tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds to build a new website, or the same sort of amount to get a new logo and a brand redesign. And then they get an intern or a junior marketing person who is not a copywriter, and certainly not an SEO or a website copywriter, to write the words on their website, or even worse, it's written by some committee of technocrats. And writing for websites, writing good copy is a skill. Everyone can write, but not everybody is a writer. And content has to pass this sort of cost benefit analysis for users. How much aggravation am I willing to tolerate? How much work do I have to put in to get the information that I want? Right. So good, well-written content makes that equation more attractive for people. There's a really, really good article called "How People Read Online" by the Norman Nielsen Group, NN Group, about good copywriting and how it improves engagement, recall, and trust. I really strongly recommend you go look at that. It was written a long time ago and it's been updated a little bit since, but it's still extraordinarily valid about the impact of good quality writing. We also hypothesize that it is a factor for search engine ranking, and also potentially important for AI optimization, on the grounds that if content is easy to read, it tends to produce better outcomes that Google can detect. And also there's some research, and I covered this in my webinar, that content that is easy for AIs to read and digest tends to be quoted and cited more often than more complex content. And there's an additional point, which is around accessibility. Not everyone reads at a degree level, but in our world, B2B technology, a lot of content is written at a very high reading age. And that's not always very helpful. So there's lots of good reasons why readability matters, and it's in my view, forgive me, I'm a recovering ex-journalist and writer of 25 years, shockingly overlooked. Okay, so how do you measure it? So there's a tool called Sitebulb, which is a pretty gnarly, hardcore SEO tool that you can download and run on your computer. You get it from sitebulb.com. There is a 14-day free trial, so you can go run this test. And what it does is it will scan across your whole site, and among other things, it will measure the readability and sentiment of all the copy on your site and produce one of these little pie charts. So this is articulate data. More than 3/4 of our copy is easy to read to some degree. Most of it, half of it's very easy to read. Good, should be. We're professional writers here. And that would be, by the way, our metric, our recommended benchmark, 75% easy to read. And that would get you a reading age of 14, 15. If you're writing for a broad audience, that's about right. If you're writing for a more specialist audience or a degree educated audience, you can aim for a reading age of 18, perhaps. So that's a tool for measuring it. This is using, by the way, a thing called the Flesch Reading Ease thing. So it's fundamentally measuring word length and sentence length, and then comparing those scores against reference texts to determine how easy it is to read. And it's a standard that was established in the 70s for the US Navy originally, I think. So it's been around for a while. It's reasonably well validated. Obviously, good writing is more than just beating the algorithm and using short words and sentences, but that's a good start. So how do you improve it? Well, short words and short sentences. I also am waging a war against the passive voice, and so I'll give you a tip for that. If you can add the words by zombies to the end of the sentence, it's likely to be in the passive voice and you should rewrite it. So, for example, mistakes were made by zombies. So avoid that, because that tends to make things very hard to read. I think these days AI can help a lot with improving writing, and used wisely. So we have at Articulate various tools that embody our brand voice and our audience information and so on into a custom GPT, and then we can run our copy through that. And it makes some surprisingly interesting, valuable suggestions. I quite like that aspect of it. We like Grammarly a lot, and we give all of our writers a paid subscription to that. And that also uses a bit of AI to suggest ways of making copy easier. And both Grammarly and Hemingway app will give you a readability score as you write. And they use not just Flesch Reading Ease, but a number of other things like Gunning Fog and stuff that are a little bit more sophisticated about that. So recommended to use those tools. To be honest, and I would say this, and it's a bit self-serving, but if you've got important copy, hire somebody who knows what they're doing and have it done properly. Yeah, okay. Well, here endeth the lesson. Let's move on to the next metric. So metric number 5, conversion rates. Obviously, conversion rates on a website matter because that's where the rubber hits the road, right? Only a few companies can justify having a website and say, I don't want any leads. So in Articulate's experience, we only had one like that, and it was a company that's now a $1 billion unicorn, and they were just in their very early stages. We built the first website had been built by the founder. It was a pretty sort of basic sort of thing, and we built their second website. They're now on their fourth or fifth. And at the time, they just didn't want to talk very much about what they were doing. There was something very clever with AI, and they said, we don't want anyone to convert on this. We're not interested in customers. We can't sell them anything yet. So yeah, and most of our clients, they would like more leads and more opportunities. So there's a sort of a hidden benefit to converting, getting people to fill in forms, getting them to engage with you, and that is if they fill in a form, certainly if they're doing it on HubSpot, you can correlate and associate the cookie that tracks their activity on your website, the pages they visit, when they visit, with a CRM record, so who that person is. So suddenly you get this insight into, well, Matthew came to the website the first time last year, he's visited 28 pages, most recently he looked at this, in his last visit he looked at these pages. And that's incredibly powerful way to measure engagement. So there's a hidden benefit to getting conversion, which is this insight into people's behavior on your website. So how do you measure conversion rate? Well, I've mentioned HubSpot. There are free tiers of HubSpot, free FREE, so you can go and install this tracking code on your site. You can use the basic CRM and do all these things that I mentioned. You can embed forms from HubSpot on your website. And that will allow you to produce graphs like this. I very carefully excluded the scales because this is now becoming a little bit sensitive, but this is data from Articulate. And the bars show you the amount of visitors you have and where they came from. So different colors represent search or direct or whatever. And the line represents the percentage of those people that fill in a form. So the metric for conversion rate is quite simple. It's the number of form submissions divided by the number of website sessions over a period of time. And in our experience for a B2B business, B2B technology company typically, and this is across hundreds of websites that we've seen and worked on, with a good range of offers, something to fill in, top of funnel, middle of funnel conversion offers, a range of between 1% and 4% is kind of the benchmark for conversion rates, meaning out of 100 visits, between 1 and 4 people will fill in a form. If you've just got a contact us page, you will be lucky to have 1 in 1,000 people fill in that contact page, because most people perceive contact pages as, if I fill this in, either I'm going to be ignored by the company, which is often not what they want, or I'm going to be pestered like hell by a salesperson, which may also not be what I want. So contact forms are particularly off-putting for people and bottom of funnel. So if you're not getting the leads you want from your website and you've just got a contact us page, the next thing you need to do is start building content that people really want to download and build some landing pages and pop-ups and things and gate the content and really make it clear what they're going to get and why it's valuable and why it's important. And you also need to think about if people are coming in for a blog post here and you want them to get to a landing page there, how do they do that? So what's that next best step? How do you make that journey happen? And a fair amount of, for higher volume sites, cohort and A/B testing to really optimize that. We've seen, for example, almost a doubling of click-throughs by changing the wording of a call to action, or by having some CTA for this and a CTA for that. This one will get twice as many clicks and submissions than that one. So just testing this stuff constantly is important. A surprising finding that we had recently is that, I'm conscious I'm almost out of time, but this is almost the last point. Some of our best converting offers are, here's a blog post, like really long detailed blog post. You can download this blog post as a PDF if you fill in this form. We'll email it to you. Now that is The value exchange is really clear. You give us a bit of information about yourself, and you get this content in a different format that may be more flexible, usable, read it later, whatever it is, whatever reason you're doing. You know what you're getting, you're just getting it in a different format. I always find that quite surprising, but it is an effective thing to do. So ungate your content so AIs can spider it and absorb it, and then deliver it in a meaningful, in a useful format to people, and make that the value exchange. That's an interesting tip. Okay, so next steps. In summary, I think you should be regularly and weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever's appropriate to you, measuring your loading speed, your SEO health, your AI and SEO reach, your readability and sentiment, and the conversion rates on your website. You can set up KPI dashboards for these things. You can use these tools to track this on a regular basis. Tracking it is step one. Step two, do something about it. Try and improve it. Measure the progress you make. This is clearly intended to be a spur to action rather than just, aren't we doing brilliantly? So measure and improve. And as I said, I'm very happy to look at anyone's website, and anyone who's listening, thank you very much for joining today. You can get in touch with me and I will give you personal feedback on your website. And that is the end of the talk. Thank you very much for sitting through it. Only 1 minute over. I was 4 minutes over this morning when I did it, so I'm feeling very, very happy about that. Thank you very much. That's it for today, and we're out.